Good evening, everyone. My name is CPA Dennis Wabomba, Senior Examinations Officer and the chairperson for this session. We have had some bit of power challenges, but at least we are able to begin to start on time. As we wait for our colleagues to join us, I know many are trying to log in. The number is growing. So we can allow our friends a few minutes, like 3 minutes or 4, and then we get started as the presenter also gets on board. So kindly, we can wait for our friends. In the next few minutes, maybe 4 minutes, should be able to get started. Thank you so much. I wish to once again welcome you for this session. Our presenter is trying to share with us. If he's able to do that, yeah, that's very good. Andrew, I can see we are able to share. Good enough. The numbers have also grown a bit. I know many of our colleagues are going to join us along the way. We can get started. We're supposed to begin at 5, but I'm sure we shall be able to cover whatever we are supposed to cover. Once again, my name is CPA Dennis Wawomba, Senior Examinations Officer. I bring greetings from the Institute, and I would like to thank you so much for sparing your valuable time to be part of us this evening. I don't know, many of you are busy, and this is the time they are supposed to be having other commitments, but at least you have been able to spare your valuable time to be part of this. I think this will give us some good ground for preparation for the forthcoming exams and even enriching our knowledge. Without taking a lot of your time this evening, our presenter today is CPA Andrew Kawere. Kawere is a Deputy Director, National Payment Systems Department in the Bank of Uganda. He has vast experience in this subject. He has also facilitated a number of CPDs organized by the Institute. So I wish to request you to pay attention, and we benefit from his experience. Towards the end of this presentation, in case you have any issue, you will feel free to share in the Q&A, so that by the time we leave this presentation, we do not have anything that is pending and anything that we have not raised. Feel free in the Q&A, even as he's presenting. So allow me to take this opportunity to introduce CPA Andrew Kawere to give us the presentation. Over to you, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dennis. I was trying to get the microphone unmuted. And good evening, members. It's always a pleasure to share my thoughts with you, the students of the Institute. And I'm happy to join you again this evening for a discussion around integration of knowledge and what you need to do to prepare for your forthcoming exams. The presentation will run in terms of content. We're going to have a bit of background information, and then we'll delve into some tips in terms of what you need to do as part of your preparation. And then we'll thereafter have a look at some of the key skill requirements. What is it that the examiners want you to demonstrate as part of your learning? And then we shall also look at some of the recent comments. What is it that has been outstanding in terms of the examiners' review? What feedback are the examiners giving to the candidates? And then finally, we'll close the discussion with a bit of question and answer session. Just a second. I don't know, for one reason or another, my slides are not moving. So just give me a second to get this fixed. Dennis, are you able to see the slides?
We can see the slides.
Are they moving on your end?
No, there is only the cover page.
Okay, just let me try to see what the challenge is.
I can see the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
We are moving now.
All right, thank you. The technology, is sometimes problematic, but I'm happy that we can now get going. So this is the agenda that we shall follow for the next 2 hours or so. A bit of an introduction. I mentioned the learning outcomes, the core skills that are expected of you as candidates. And then I will delve into some preparation tips. Then I will highlight key observations, including recent comments from examiners on particular case study questions, and then we shall have a discussion thereafter. So in terms of the scope and learning outcomes, something is terribly wrong. I'm failing to move the slides. I think, Dennis, I shared the slides. Maybe you'll just move them from your end. I don't know what's happening. I'm failing to move them again.
That's what I see the agenda.
Yes,
so
but
let me try to share on my side.
Please do. Let me stop sharing and then you can proceed. Okay, but we'll still go ahead as we wait for Dennis to project. In terms of the learning outcomes, the first learning outcome is for the candidates to be able to evaluate and integrate the knowledge and skills acquired in the previous levels of the course, together with the knowledge and skills acquired at this level. Now, this is really an outcome that shows the real structure of the paper. The paper aims at integrating all the knowledge that will have been acquired on the ICPAU program for the entire course of study for you as candidates. And indeed, these case studies always have bits and bits of information from the different papers that will have been covered on the course of study of the ICPAU program. So you must be able to demonstrate that this knowledge can be linked and indeed integrated before deriving solutions or recommendations that are reasonable. The second learning outcome is on the development and delivery of professional solutions to business problems, including demonstration of judgment, analysis, communication, and presentation. I will later on delve into a bit of detail on what judgment is about and what communication and presentation skills entail. However, the learning outcome emphasizes the need for you to deliver professional solutions. And I think this is very, very key, because at this level, candidates are expected to be able to show what they can do out there, okay? You are expected to be able to show what you can do out there in the market. And indeed, as a qualified accountant, one of your core services will be delivering professional solutions to the market. So this is a skill you must demonstrate, and it is a key learning outcome. Outcome number 3 is on reporting on solutions to business problems, but in an understandable manner. Okay, in an understandable manner. This question of understandability brings out the professionalism that is expected of you as a candidate. Okay, you are expected to demonstrate, to deliver, solutions, not just anyhow, because even in the earlier papers, if you're doing corporate finance, for example, or if you're doing audit, you will deliver some kind of solution, which can be an audit report, and that can be.
Sorry for the interruption. Sorry for that. I'm trying to check. I'm not seeing the mail. I don't know, maybe if you can again try to share from that side, or you can try to reshare with me again so that I can. Otherwise,
all right, I will just do that again.
okay.
Are the slides visible, Dennis?
Yes, I see the key learning outcomes projecting.
Yes, and that's where I was.
Mm.
And I was commenting on learning outcome 3, which is
Okay.
around reporting solutions to business problems. And the message was that candidates at this level must demonstrate the ability to report on challenges that businesses are facing. But I was emphasizing that it's not just reporting anyhow, like they've been doing in the other papers, but this has to be in a more understandable manner and in a more professional manner as expected of a qualified accountant. Learning outcome 4 is on the exercise of judgment on advanced reporting issues. This again brings out the professionalism that is expected of a candidate at this level, particularly around use of professional judgment. As we shall note shortly, many times examiners give you a blank check in terms of how you can present certain things. So you must be able to use your professional judgment to present certain things in the most appropriate way. Number 5 is on assessing critically matters around taxation to provide tax planning advice for individuals and businesses. I think this is pretty straightforward. It is something that builds onto the taxation paper, advanced taxation, to bring around or bring about some of these components into the final paper, which is integration of knowledge. The next learning outcome is around treasury solutions and financial planning. This is a key item as well. And indeed, as you prepare and look at past papers, you will see that corporate finance and financial management are very, very popular themes in this paper. And this includes forecasting. It includes forecasting, but also financial analysis and financial planning. Learning outcome 7 is around corporate governance. It is very rare, for corporate governance issues to entirely go missing in an integration of knowledge exam. And so candidates must be able to advise on corporate governance in companies. But again, like I will emphasize later on, this kind of advice ought to be as practical as possible. Unfortunately, most of the times candidates present things theoretically. And that is one of the reasons why some people don't get very good scores. So corporate governance is key. Corporate governance is very popular, and candidates should be able to evaluate corporate governance matters and provide the right advice to the clients in the paper or examination. And then number 8 is on current affairs. This is something that many students ignore, but it is a key learning outcome. You must prepare for current affairs. You must be able to prepare for topical issues in the country. You must be able to prepare for topical issues globally in as far as the business environment is concerned. And so you must demonstrate that you are well appraised with such developments, and that's learning outcome 8. So overall, these learning outcomes aim to test whether you are ready for the market. The learning outcomes aim to test whether you as a candidate are ready to serve as a professional accountant. Are you ready to deliver reasonable professional solutions? Of course, an exam environment is different from a real practical scenario, but that is exactly what integration of knowledge tries to get to. So the question at the end of the day is whether you as a candidate are ready to serve the market, whether you are ready to serve as a practicing accountant who will probably at a later point even obtain a practicing certificate, or whether you are considered ready to work as an accountant in employment. Now, in terms of scope for the paper, integration of knowledge covers all the themes of the CPS syllabus. And I mentioned earlier on that some of the common themes include corporate finance. Corporate finance includes a number of things, like you are definitely aware, from the basic financial management aspects to the advanced corporate finance matters, including discussions around debt and equity and other means of finance, matters around the ideal capital structure and the cost of funding, basic things like budget forecasts, financial analysis, and things of the like, corporate strategy, financial reporting and related accounting aspects, audit, obviously, taxation, and so many other things. Those are key themes that are tested in this paper. And like I said in the previous slide, the question is whether you are ready to deliver professional solutions. So at the back of your mind, you could as well ask yourself, what kind of solutions would a professional accountant offer or deliver? And those solutions include what I've just highlighted and more. Current affairs, I've emphasized this already, but also matters of national concern and general economic and business trends. Those are things that you must be conversant with as you prepare for the exams. Now let's move into what core skills that are required of you as a candidate. What is it that the examiner will be looking out for? What is it exactly that the examiner will be looking out for in terms of skills you ought to demonstrate to be able to score a pass on this paper? The first, and I think fundamentally critical skill is analytical in nature. Analytical skills are I think the foundation of every other skill requirement for integration of knowledge. And what do we mean by analytical skills? You will demonstrate good analytical skills if you can look at the case study in totality. Okay, the integration of knowledge case study will have so many bits of information that is scattered across the material. Okay, so the question is, are you able to look at this information in totality, but not in isolation? Okay, you should not pick upon small issues and lose the big picture in the case study. Okay, but how do you arrive at the big picture? You'll arrive at that big picture by connecting the dots that are scattered, across the case study, and then drawing the relevant conclusions. You cannot draw the appropriate conclusions unless you've looked at the case study in totality. Okay, so you must look at the case study holistically and then draw the required conclusions, draw the right conclusions from that information. That is part of analytical competence. You should be able to relate qualitative and quantitative information. These case studies will give you qualitative and quantitative information. Now, the examiner may not necessarily ask you to relate the two, as the case might have been in your earlier levels. However, you should be able to relate both the qualitative and the quantitative information as part of your analysis. And indeed, drawing the right conclusions will require you to relate these scattered bits of information so that you are able to to indeed look at the case study holistically, like I said earlier on. And then you need to bring out all the issues, all perspectives to the case study at hand. And this again relates to the consideration of the materials in totality. So the analytical skills are a very, very core aspect of integration of knowledge. And I need to mention that most of the other skill requirements are really building on top of analytical abilities as a core basic skill expected of the candidates. Lastly, under analytical skills, you must support your arguments with facts and answer the hanging questions. Okay, these case studies usually have a lot of information, but unfortunately, some candidates, tend to miss the facts that would have supported the arguments. Okay, you make an argument, but without supporting it with facts from the case study, it ends up as a generic theoretical discussion. So you must support your arguments with facts, okay? And this will help you to answer the hanging questions. You need to relate the cause and effect of issues scattered across the case study, okay? If there are things that are linked, bring out those linkages in your discussions. Show that this is happening because of X, Y, Z that happened in the materials as highlighted. That is analysis. Consider the issues, consider the implication of those issues, and what needs to be done about those issues. Okay, like I said, answer the hanging questions. You could also present an issue and then justify it with the detailed assessment of the facts. You could say, this entity faces significant corporate governance weakness. The justification is X, Y, Z. There is no board in place. The board is in place, but it is not independent. The board is in place, but it never meets. The board meets, but the quality of discussions is poor. Okay, you have presented an issue, and then you support that issue with the facts that are presented in the case study. And then the other very important component of the analytical skills is that recommendations must flow from your discussions. You need to ensure that the recommendations you are presenting are linked to the discussions, and the discussions must come from the case study facts. Sometimes candidates present recommendations just because they want to have a section on recommendations. Okay, now, mere presentation of a section for recommendations, a heading that says recommendations, does not guarantee you good scores unless those recommendations are logically flowing from the discussions. Okay, so that is how you demonstrate analytical skills. Now, the other key skill requirement is on conceptual skills. Conceptual skills build on top of basic analytical skills. So having built the ability to analyze the issues at that level, can you then comprehend the more complex challenges? Can you look at a case study and pick out the real top organizational issues? Most of the case studies you'll get are designed to try and create ambiguity in certain cases. These case studies are written to try and create, complexity and controversy at top organizational level. So now you need to demonstrate to the examiners that you have the ability to comprehend those issues and to propose professional solutions. Okay, the issues may seem controversial, but that is the exact intention. so that you can demonstrate that you comprehend those complex issues and that you can identify the real challenges and propose realistic interventions. That takes me to judgment. Now, judgment is a key thing as well at this level. And that's why I've said that some of these case studies are designed with controversy, deliberately, okay? Deliberately designed with controversy, so that you can show the examiner that you are mature in terms of judgment, that you can make the right decisions, okay, in such a situation. You need to show the examiner that you've actually evaluated all the options. All the feasible or plausible options have been considered before you take a stand. That shows good professional judgment. You need to consider balanced arguments. You see, rarely, and this you can see this even in your daily life. It is on very rare occasions that you can have a situation where there is only one course of action. Okay. It is not very common in a typical corporate setting. Most of the time, there are a little bit of possible alternatives to corporate challenges. So we expect you to be able to provide balanced arguments. Candidates must provide balanced arguments in scenarios where there are different possible alternatives. Of course, this won't happen in a technical aspect such as application of an accounting standard. It may not apply to a technical matter such as assessment of cost of capital, because that is real technical and it has to follow a certain standard methodology. However, most of the scenarios you get will require a little bit of argument here and there. So we need to see the balance in arguments coming out. But the balance shouldn't be coming out based on emotions. The arguments cannot be based on your thinking. They must be based on the facts in the case study. Okay. The other aspect of judgment is around commercial decisions. Whereas candidates must apply the technical knowledge acquired, in certain situations, we need to see the commercial thinking. You need to make sound commercial decisions. And sometimes these decisions could go outside the basic logic that you might have as a professional. Okay. For example, you might have a case study that is saying, and you can relate that to the current economic environment. You might have a very good business case, very good numbers. Technical evaluation says project is absolutely going to add value to an entity. Internal rate of return higher than, much higher than the cost of capital. Banking, financials ready to give you funding. Risks of the project may be balanced. But such a project may be venturing into a war zone and borrowing from the current global dynamics. It could be about exporting produce or exporting, whatever item you produce in Uganda to either Russia or Ukraine. Okay. Now, at basic level, it's a no-brainer. You want to go for such a high value adding project. But given the geopolitics at the moment, given the global tensions, given the disruption in those two countries posed by the war, it may not be a good time to venture into such a project, however rewarding it is financially. Okay, and that is an argument you can table, and that will bring out the concept of sound commercial judgment that may not necessarily be in sync with what the numbers are saying. The other aspect around judgment is ethical argument or ethical discussions. You need to demonstrate ethical awareness. Okay, you need to demonstrate ethical awareness by standing for the right actions and practices, irrespective of the financial implications. So generally, you must show that maturity. You must show professional judgment, and this could be displayed by the recognizing the need for assumptions and business logic. I've given an example on business logic, but it could also be the need for assumptions. Sometimes the examiner will give you information that is deliberately sketchy, but that doesn't mean that you can't advise. Okay, don't tell your reporting authority that had I been given additional information, I would have decided. But currently, we can't make a decision on funding. We can't make a decision on, an appraisal of a project. You need to be aware that sometimes you have to make assumptions, and that brings out your judgment skills and professional ability in that respect. Communication. Now, this is a very, very key skill that is being tested. Probably it weighs the highest in terms of scores. Communication is very, very important. And communication can be seen from so many different perspectives. In terms of the reporting, in terms of how you present your report, to what extent do you use technical terms? To what extent do you define such technical terms? To what extent do you tailor your message, your writing to the audience you are addressing? If you're writing to a minister, like we shall see in some of the snippets I've picked from the recent past papers, if you're writing to a minister, there are certain things, or there is a certain tone you will put the letter. Okay, that is a minister or any politician. I'm picking on a minister because one of the past papers I reviewed yesterday required a letter to the minister. So if you write to the minister, if you write to a politician, the tone of your letter cannot be the same tone that it would be if you're writing to, say, an accountant or a board member on, on a board member of an entity in business. Okay, it's not the same tone that you'll use when you're writing to a CFO or to an audit partner in case it is an audit question. So the technical terms must be managed depending on the audience. And this could mean, in certain respects, defining technical terms in your report, if any technical terms have been used. Okay, you may need to define such terms in your report as part of your preliminary information. And then, of course, a transmittal letter for the report. That is, I guess, pretty straightforward. And then the executive summary, which is part of the background details in your report. Okay, how appropriate. You can see I've put in bold and even underlined the word appropriate. Okay, not every summary is an executive summary, and not every summary you write might get you the full marks available for such a section. So the executive summary must highlight the key issues of your report, not the key issues of the case study. Okay, it must highlight the key issues in your report so that the reader can get an overall picture, an overall summary of what your details are, of what you've written about in your report. Okay, and not the issues in the case study. Unfortunately, if you read the examiner's reports, you will see that the examiners, increasingly indicate that candidates sometimes, actually not sometimes, that candidates many times reproduce the content of the case study as part of the executive summary. So in that case, it's not appropriate. But the executive summary should indicate what the key issues are in the case study, maybe a paragraph or two, what your assessments are, what are the problems, what are the challenges, and then snippets of what is recommended. Not more than a page is sufficient. Then the other issue is around the appropriateness of the background information. Again, in the examiner's reports, it has been highlighted that many candidates spend a lot of time rewriting background materials. 3-4 pages of background material is a waste of time. Okay, the introduction is meant to just set the context for your report. Okay, but you don't have to go back and rewrite materials that I presented in the case study. You know, the introduction to a report should not be more than maybe 3/4 of a page, or a page if you must. Okay, just to set the context for the report, to pick up on the key, you know, background details in the case study. Okay, maybe how long the company has been in operation, maybe key changes that have occurred in the recent past, key plans that are being considered, okay, and some of the hot issues that are being faced at the moment. Not more than a page, not more than maybe 3/4 of a page, okay? But sometimes candidates present 3 pages of background material, which is completely a waste of time. It is a reproduction of what is in the case study, and that doesn't add any value because it is more than necessary. All you need is a few key issues, a few key pointers, so that the reader of your report can contextualize the findings that are presented later on. Sentence construction. You know, this is maybe basic English, and I will not say more than that. Okay, grammar, same thing. But I will comment about the use of slang, and I will come back to that later on. Okay, use of slang, use of, you know, things that are not formal, use of informal language. Okay, I will do it. The chief executive or the CFO should do things pack a last. You know, such slang will cost you marks. But even basic things like handwriting, you know, handwriting. How do you expect to get good scores if your handwriting is illegible? You know, you must be conscious of what you're writing. In primary school, the teachers used to tell us that we are scribbling, you know, like chicken, you know, scratching like chicken or something like that. You know, it's an embarrassment if you have material that can't be read. Okay, so mind your handwriting. And then the information flow. How do the facts flow? How do you bring out the issues? Okay, I mentioned earlier on that you might have an issue, present an issue, and then justify why you think that is an issue. That is a flow. Another person will discuss the issues presented, analyze them, and then end with some kind of conclusion in quotes on that particular variable. That creates a bit of a flow. Okay, but sometimes people jump from one thing to another without, you know, coherence. That will cost you marks in terms of communication. Facts and opinions should not be mixed up. Okay, facts and opinions shouldn't be mixed up. Facts are provided for in the case study. Opinions are matters that come out of your discussion. So you need to be very clear on this. Don't make your opinions appear to be facts. Neither should the facts be presented as your opinions. Okay. So as the examiners read, if you're presenting the facts presented in the case study as your own thoughts, then again, you are getting things wrong, and that will affect your score on communication. Presentation. Presentation moves together with communication as a skill. But I will highlight a few things here. First, the presentation format. Mind the format of your submission. Let me also note that a lot of improvement in the recent past has been noted by the examiners with regard to the report layouts. Okay, the reports are generally good, but in terms of what we mean by a report layout, I will refer you to the previous slide where I talked about technical terms, a transmittal letter, a background material, executive summary, table of contents, the discussions, then of course at the end, conclusions, recommendations, and maybe some appendices. That is a standard, kind of report that is expected, and most people, seem to be good on that. But when it comes to presentations, okay, when it comes to presentations now, I mean a requirement where you are to present, the materials in form of a presentation, say a PowerPoint presentation, like the one I'm using here, then some candidates seem to struggle. A presentation cannot be the same as a report. You can't have a crowded slide. Okay, a presentation only picks upon key pointers, key topics, key issues, with the rest of the content discussed verbally. Okay, so the presentation structure is something that candidates need to take note of. Many times candidates present or propose presentations that appear to be summarized reports. That will not get you good scores. Memos. This is one of the most basic presentation and communication avenues. To, from, date, subject, and then the content. I've seen cases where the examiners require discussion notes. Okay, discussion notes are almost like a presentation, but maybe with a little bit more detail, but not to the extent that you would find in a report. So the discussion notes are a little broader than what you would have in a PowerPoint presentation, but not to the extent of detail that you would have in a normal report or in a normal memo. Letters, these have also been a requirement in terms of how you communicate the findings. But I think what I want to emphasize on the letters is that you must tailor the tone of the letter to the audience. and don't forget about the professional courtesies that you have to put in a professional letter. It must have an addressee. It must have a salutation. You don't just hit the addressee straight with your corporate governance problems or your financial management challenges. You must have some courtesies, some introductory courtesies as a first paragraph. Okay, and this could even refer to how you get involved into the engagement, a bit about your TOR, if any, the salutation basically. And then at the end, there must be some courtesies again as you close off that kind of interaction. Sometimes there are email requests. An email is maybe one of the most basic, there isn't much restriction to how much you can put in an email. Okay, and so these are common presentation formats that you ought to be aware of, and use the most appropriate one if it is an open question. But if the question is specific, then you need to remember the tenets, the attributes that come with each of those presentation formats. Cross-referencing should not be misleading. Okay, and by cross-referencing, I want to relate this to the appropriate use of appendices. A examiners have noted that some candidates just do appendices just for the sake. But an appendix is irrelevant unless it has been referred to in the report. Okay, the appendix is only useful if you've referred to it as part of your discussions. And that's why we're emphasizing that cross-referencing must not be misleading. If you're saying details of this discussion, details of this computation are in this appendix, then make sure it is the same appendix that you've actually referred to. But the more important thing, I think, for me, is that the appendices must be relevant. Don't just do an appendix just for the sake. They must be relevant. And you must use them appropriately. You can't have technical. There was a question in I think September this year or June. And one of the requirements was on how a lease of motor vehicles would be presented in the financial statements. Now, that detail cannot be in the report you're preparing to the MD. Okay, you only have a bit of a description of what needs to be done, maybe a description of what the standard requires, theoretically, and then the computations of the rights of use and related matters will be in an appendix. Okay, same thing if you're doing a project evaluation. You can't put the details of net present value computation in the body of a report to a board or to a CEO. Those details will naturally move to appendices. So the appendices, one, must be relevant, but two, they must be used appropriately. Then there are issues around illustrations, graphs, tables, okay, and charts. These are things that can bring out very, very good presentation skills from you as a candidate. In the June 2022 exam, either June or March, there was a requirement for candidates to comment on the matrix structure, relevance of the matrix structure. Okay. Now, such a question gives you a very good use case where you demonstrate your presentation and indeed communication expertise by discussing what a matrix structure is, how it would work for that company, and even showing graphically how the matrix structure would look like. Okay. Now, such a chart, such an organogram can be an appendix, which you can refer to after making such a good discussion, because you're telling the examiner that it's not only proper for the company to implement a matrix structure, but you even have a proposal of what the matrix structure would look like. And that proposal is in appendix XYZ, or that proposal is in chart number 1. I now move on to the next section of the presentation as we move towards closure, so that we have probably more time for the discussions. So how then should you prepare to meet those expectations? How should you prepare to polish those key skill requirements? Okay. Scan through what you've covered on the CPA program, from the paper 1 to paper to paper 17. Check, go through what you've covered, but don't just read anyhow. Focus on the application of those concepts, because that is entirely what integration of knowledge is going to be testing. Focus on application. As you go through that material, the question that should be at the back of your mind is, how can this be applied to a company? How can this be applied to an organization? How can this be applied in a business context? Okay, that is the lingering question that you should have at the back of your mind, because integration of knowledge will not test anything other than practical application. Okay, so as you go through the materials, think about application of those concepts. Revisit the areas which you thought were irrelevant. Okay, I know that as students go through the course, sometimes they say, this one is theory, this one can't work, this one is irrelevant. I would like to caution you and say, think about those concepts and ask yourself, what is the remote practicability that this concept might have in the remotest of possibilities? Because what you think is remote might be what the examiner will ask you to apply. And then consider the business and professional implications of current affairs and topical issues, both locally and globally. I talked about this earlier on, so it's just an area of emphasis. And then in terms of key areas, reflect upon the most common things that professional accountants are known for. These include, of course, financial reporting, accounting, corporate finance, financial management, and the like, corporate governance advisory services, general risk management, audit, internal and external audit, corporate strategy. But I think the key thing that I will emphasize is that in all your reviews, think about the practical application of these issues and the possible implementation challenges that you might find in the market. The skills we have gone through, analytical skills, conceptual skills, professional judgment, and the rest, are not skills you're going to read in a paper. These are not skills you're going to read in a book. Okay? You don't read analytical skills, you don't read conceptual skills, you don't read about judgment. Instead, you must practice. You must practice, challenge yourself, interpret these issues, ask yourself, what are the issues in this piece of information? What are the critical issues? How can they be resolved? Challenge yourself. Have a discussion with your colleagues, or if you do some classes, have a discussion with your lecturer or your colleagues, and try to prepare yourself by tuning the thinking. Okay, analyze the information, try to analyze it, and subject your thinking to a test. Okay, either by comparing with a colleague, or by checking yourself against a solution if there is one. Okay. What I'm emphasizing is that the skills being tested at this level are not skills you'll get theoretically. You must subject your thinking to you must prepare. You must practice that analytical ability by analyzing issues and subjecting your analysis to a test on whether it is sensible or not. Okay. Of course, use the materials provided by the Institute. The study text has tried to explain some of these concepts, okay, including the attached case studies in that textbook if you have it. But try to test your thinking. Don't just read the way you read a novel, or the way you would read about audit theory or business management. Read, but test your thinking. Test your analysis. Ask yourself, what are the key issues? And challenge yourself on whether those are indeed rightfully pointed out issues. That will help you to develop the key skills that we are looking out for. And like I said, form discussion groups to share ideas, debate issues, and to critique one another. Critique one another. Because I talked about professional judgment. Rarely do you have one single straight answer at this level. And you might have seen this even in some other papers, like paper, I don't know, maybe integration, business policy and strategy. Rarely do you have one single straight answer. So challenge one another, share the ideas, critique one another, debate the issues. And through those discussions, you will improve on your analytical skills. You will improve on your professional judgment and the rest. Pick interest in business journals. Pick interest in topical economic developments. Pick interest in current affairs. Okay. Some newspapers here in Uganda and even beyond, but I will focus on Uganda because that is something that each of you can access. Some newspapers write very, very good business journals or business stories and business analytical write-ups. Read those business stories instead of reading about sports all the time. Read about business. Ask yourself, what are these journalists saying about the economic trends? What are they saying about the business developments? What is it that this guy is saying in this article that I'm not saying? Okay. And when you go through such materials, it will help you to appreciate some of these issues, and you'll be better placed to analyze the case studies that the examiners will throw at you. Read the case studies, plan your analysis. Okay, and now this speaks to the morning session. Plan your analysis. What is it that you want to do about the case studies? For some students, it is almost, I don't know that it's cram work that for every case study, I must do this, that. But not all the analysis is always relevant. Okay, it is not true that for each and every case study, there must be a financial analysis. Okay, because you may not have numbers. So read the case study and then plan the analysis. In other words, the analytical work you have to do should be driven by the materials that you have been given. And that shows a well-prepared candidate. Okay, but you can't force analytical tools onto case studies that have limited information. That shows that there is a problem. Okay, you can't force a 5 forces model analysis onto a case study that has no information about you know, the forces of competition. Okay, you can't force a financial analysis onto a case study where you've not been given financial information. So plan the analysis and tailor the analytical work you want to do to the materials that have been provided. And remember that not all that analysis may end up being relevant to the specific exam requirement. However, arrange it logically, and where appropriate, make reference to it. And that's why I emphasize that appendices are only useful if properly referred to in your report. And those appendices might have been done in the morning, but they will only be relevant if you make reference to them in your report. And the reference must be valid. Analytical tools are important, SWOT, PESTEL, but again, a word of caution, they may not necessarily be relevant to the requirement. So you have to be careful how you bring that out. Have an answer plan. Now, beyond the analysis, even when it comes to the actual write-up of the answer, have a plan. After you've received the exam requirement in the afternoon, have a plan. What is the structure of my answer? Okay, how much content am I going to highlight in the background? What are the key issues that must not miss in my background page? Okay, how much time am I dedicating to each section of my report? And I'm saying you cannot start with an executive summary. How do you start with an executive summary before you have written the report itself? That's how candidates end up writing an executive summary that is similar to a background. An executive summary by all means should come last, okay? Because it is a summary of the report that you're presenting. So as you design your answer plan, these are things that you've got to figure out. How do I structure my solution? How much time am I dedicating to the different themes? What do I do first? What do I do last? 2, answer what has been asked for, not what you want to tell the examiner or what supports the analytical work you did. Okay, make sure that you answer you respond to the specific question requirements. Those question requirements may not directly feed into your analysis, and that's okay. It's not a problem. It's deliberate. So don't force your analysis onto the the question requirement. The examiners have noted before that some candidates force analysis on 2 questions where there is no relevance. Someone refers to an appendix that has nothing to do with the question requirement. Okay, so answer what you've been asked for. And don't worry if the analysis that was done in the morning is rendered irrelevant by the question requirement. That's okay. It's not an error. It is by design. Have your audience in mind. I mentioned this already. Are you writing to a fellow professional? Are you writing to an entrepreneur? Are you writing to a politician? Are you writing to an administrator? Are you writing to a junior person? Are you writing to a senior person? So have the audience in mind, because this will determine the tone of your write-up. It will determine the language that you use and the extent of technical jargon that you will have in your report. And then, of course, balance out the time that you will spend. Do not restate the facts of the case study. This has been a problem according to the examiners. Some candidates think that when they restate the facts of the case study, then they are analyzing. No, analysis is not you restating the facts of the case study. Analysis is using the facts of the case study to draw conclusions, to draw out issues, and make recommendations on what needs to happen, but not a restatement of the facts, which doesn't add value. Okay. Calculations are good, but don't spend most of your time on calculations. Okay. So balance that out carefully. And then lastly, on this area, reason logically and look at information in totality. I mentioned this earlier on, and I will emphasize it again because it is a key problem that the examiners have noted out. Reason logically, don't look at things in isolation. Look at the case study in totality, okay, and display that maturity and soundness in decision making. Language, I think we talked about this already. Avoid jargon, avoid colloquial language. Don't use idioms. Okay, this is not literature. Don't use idioms or slang. Okay, I know, things like leaving no stone unturned, hitting 2 birds with 1 stone, a bird in hand is worth 2 in the bush. So the strategy should be, or the proposal should be adopted immediately because a bird in hand is worth 2 in the bush. Don't use that kind of jargon or idioms in the professional writing. Okay, and then this has been emphasized a lot, but I will repeat it. The examiner's interest is in the application of the concepts and not reproduction of the theoretical issues highlighted in the case study. Neither is it the number of points that you raise. Focus should be on the quality of your discussion. How good is your discussion? Does the discussion evaluate the facts? Are all options evaluated? Are all issues looked at in totality? And do you have appropriate conclusions and recommendations that are coming from that kind of analysis? That is what the examiner wants to see, not the number of points that you are listing. In fact, in this paper, outlining will not get you a pass on any question. If you outline, or if you don't discuss or evaluate your submission, you cannot get a pass on any question. Now, as I move towards closure and into the Q&A, I just want to highlight a few things picked up by the examiners in some of the recent examinations. This is March 22. One of the requirements was discussion of the benefits of a well-constructed board of directors. Okay, now this part was fairly well discussed, with candidates bringing out issues such as increased productivity and the improvement in the quality of decision making. Okay, the question was around corporate governance, but I would like to inform you that in such a question, a good candidate will not only discuss the benefits of corporate governance, but they will also examine or comment on what is considered to be a well-constructed board of directors. Okay. So the question says benefits of a well-constructed board of directors. Good. But from a professional point of view, for a candidate that is professionally astute, they will even comment on what is constituted or what is construed to be a well-constructed board of directors. Okay, it should have diversity in terms of independence. It should have diversity in terms of expertise, finance, strategy, legal background, and the like. It should have a balance between executives and non-executives, and things of the like. Now, that would show a certain level of professional maturity, okay, even before you go into the benefits. The other question was on, well, I think I missed something in B, but you get my message. You know, you can't just go into the benefits of a well-constituted board without really highlighting what is considered to be a well, set up board. Advantages on maximizing value from internal and external audit and whether it should be outsourced. Candidates in this case were noted to be very knowledgeable about internal audit and its scope, but the discussion on whether the assignment should be outsourced kind of went missing for some candidates. Now, this means that either some candidates didn't read the entire question or focused only on what they were comfortable with. Okay. In D, pitfalls of cost leadership and what needed to change if the strategy was to work. Again, a good number of the candidates focused on only one part of the question, either pitfalls of cost leadership as a strategy or what ought to have been changed by management. So you need to look at these things in totality and make sure that you actually answer the examiner's question requirement if you are to get good marks. In E, which is again part of March 2022, candidates were asked to clarify on the chief accountant's concerns about risk management. And the examiners noted that most of the candidates simply described the risks types as opposed to deep, evaluation of the relevance of risk management as a function. And yet the case study had actually highlighted, this as a problem. The case study has highlighted this as a problem. The chief accountant was against the implementation of, the chief accountant was against the implementation of the risk management function, So candidates, instead of discussing why risk management is important as an issue, most just went straight to description of the risk exposures, which was fine, but it misses the real discussion of what the real problem was in the case study. And it shows that someone has not thoroughly appreciated the materials, or it shows poor judgment because you've missed the big picture. And it also points towards poor conceptual skills because you've not picked up what the real problem is at the entity. Presentation on measures to enhance profitability. This was quite disappointing according to the examiners because very few candidates used the assumptions provided in the case study to forecast the company's future performance, okay, of the entity. And most candidates focused on the past performance. So again, this shows gaps in conceptual skills. It shows gaps in professional judgment and inability, to really comprehend the real issues in a case study and using that information to deliver a solution. Because the moment you're talking about future performance, future profitability, then given the kind of information that had been provided, you ought to have done some bit of forecasting. Okay. And that is what the examiner wants to see. The examiner doesn't want to see a particular figure of the forecasted profit. No. Instead, the examiner wants to see that you appreciate the need for forecasting. Do you appreciate the need that the fact that you can use certain assumptions provided to forecast the performance of an entity? That's what the examiner wants to see, not the particular forecast figure of maybe 100 billion for this year and 30 billion for the other year. No. Okay. That's not what the examiner is looking for. The examiner wants to see that you truly appreciate the need to use the assumptions and have some kind of forecasts to support the future profitability discussions. Relationship between dividend yield and return on equity, this was poorly done and the examiners were disappointed. And of course, for candidates, who have gone through the rigorous corporate finance studies and financial management, it is quite disappointing if candidates can't relate, such two basic ratios. Okay. And then likely dividends to be paid. This is similar to the projection of the financial performance that I talked about earlier on. If the examiner says likely dividends to be paid in a question that has given you the dividend policy, in a question that has given you, key highlights, key hints on what is projected for the future, then you need to really do some forecasting. You need to show the examiner that you have the right thinking to really see that there must be some kind of projection and computation. Otherwise, how do you project a dividend if you've not done other forecasting? So those are things that affected candidates' performance in March 2022. Similarly, there was a question on whether it was appropriate to invest in equities. And again, these candidates on the whole kind of missed the picture, missed the crust of what the examiner had highlighted in the case study. You had a struggling company, and then you had investors that were looking for entities to buy in Uganda, of which the case study at hand was a candidate. So the examiner asked whether investment in equities was appropriate in Uganda, given, of course, the challenges of the COVID pandemic, given the reduction in equity prices for other companies, and given other macroeconomic indicators. Okay, but candidates instead discussed listing requirements. So again, this pointed out, as noted by the examiners in the report, this pointed out the lack of contextualization and the inability of the candidates to, really pick the key conceptual issues in the materials. A few snippets from the June exam as well. There was a requirement for a draft agenda for a named discussion with the financials. This was a company that was also struggling with debt, struggling with missed loan repayments. So you had a planned meeting between the MD and the financials. So candidates were asked to propose a draft agenda. Okay, but the candidates' performance was not satisfactory. Some candidates simply put outlines of 1, 2, 3. These are the discussion issues, which is very unfortunate. Others, pointed things out of the blue, things that missed the real things that such an entity would have to discuss with its financials under such circumstances. For example, how do you have such a discussion if you've not looked at the financial performance of your entity? How can you have such a discussion with a lender if you've not discussed the company's recovery plan? So again, contextualization. You candidates must avoid thinking theoretically. For all these questions, think practically. Think on what must be done to save the situation. Okay, and this should come from the case study. These things that I'm highlighting, were all laid out in the case study. A struggling company, bad, publicity, missed debt repayments, poor financial discussions, proposals for recovery considered by EXCOM. So if you're going to discuss a debt restructuring plan with your lenders, those are things that you can't miss on an agenda. Okay, so again, poor contextualization, poor conceptual skills were demonstrated in that regard. B, evaluation of proposed recovery initiatives. This again, certain proposals were left out. I think candidates maybe focused on what they were most conversant with. But in such a case, you ought to pick on the key issues. And in this particular scenario, there were initiatives such as collateral sharing and debt restructuring, which were entirely missed by the candidates. Relevance of a matrix structure, I commented on this earlier on in the communication skills segment. But you don't just discuss, oh, a matrix structure is advantageous because it promotes teamwork. A matrix structure is advantageous because it does this and that. How can that be done in the context of the particular case study that you have at hand? Okay, that is what must be put forward. And in this case study, there were clear indications of disagreement between reporting lines. There were cases of the people at the branches disagreeing with the functional heads in terms of who takes priority for the subordinate staff. These are things that one has to bring out in such a discussion. Okay. And of course, maybe showing a bit of a pictorial on how the matrix structure would look like. So value from a forensic audit, again, the point that I think has been most outstanding in all these issues in the past maybe 1-2 years of the exams has been poor analytical skills, failure to contextualize the discussions, okay, and poor conceptual skills, and in some cases, reflections in poor judgment. So as I move towards the end, allow me to highlight a few general observations, which you might as well call my final thoughts. The first one is the good stuff. What is it that the examiners have generally picked up as the good stuff? One are the well-structured reports on the whole. Okay, this is on the whole. And this is notwithstanding my earlier comments in terms of what constitutes background material, what constitutes an executive summary, and the rest. Okay, that notwithstanding, on the whole, candidates have been noted to present well-structured reports, except the cross-referencing to appendices, except the inappropriate or, in some cases, a completely missed out use of charts and tables, and the poor use of appendices. Two, candidates, I think, demonstrate strong technical knowledge. At technical level, candidates know their stuff. Corporate governance, corporate strategy, economic management, marketing. Those are areas where candidates have demonstrated strong technical knowledge, even though the application remains a challenge. Okay, candidates are knowledgeable, very knowledgeable in those areas, but the application of that knowledge to the case studies remains challenging to a good number of them. But what are the bad things? The bad things, again, I've just talked about it. Application and contextualization of the discussions requires improvement based on the past examiners' reports. Conclusions and recommendations should be based on the discussions. Don't just conclude, don't just throw a recommendation just because you want to show that you had a section on recommendations. It will be read and you will not get the right scores. You'd rather have 3 well thought through recommendations than 7 recommendations that are coming out of the blue. The presentation format, the letters, you know, these are areas that you need to be mindful about. Okay, remember the 7 C's of communication. Now, you may argue that this is paper 1 material, okay, business administration or business management material, and 7 C's of communication don't apply to integration of knowledge. Oh, you'll be shocked, because that is what examiners are going to be looking out for when they ask you to write a letter. Okay, when the examiner says draft a letter to the minister, one of the things they're looking for is the 7 C's. How clear is your communication in terms of the subject? How complete is your communication in terms of the message that the question has specifically asked you to deliver? How complete is it? How concise is it? How coherent is it? Okay, how considerate is it for the audience? To what extent does it take note of the person you're writing to? Okay, so the 7 C's, but tailored to meet the audience. And then weaknesses in the following areas. Now, these ones are technical areas, but they continue to be challenging to the candidates. Corporate finance is a challenge for many candidates. Okay, sometimes candidates cannot even satisfactorily analyze financial information, which is a shame. Having gone through rigorous financial management and corporate finance papers, how can you at integration of knowledge level fail to put up a formal, thorough analysis of financial statements? So that is a shame, and you know, please polish those areas for those who intend to sit the exams in future. Okay, financial reporting. This remains a challenge, and maybe this is not surprising, because financial reporting, even at the level 3, it's you know, it's always a problem case. So those problems tend to spill over to integration of knowledge. Ethical matters, surprisingly, you know, sometimes candidates cannot put up solid discussions on ethical issues. And this was noted even in the most recent examination. And then the other bad thing is about time wasting in long background materials and executive summaries that are inappropriate. We already saw what an appropriate executive summary should be and what an appropriate background should be. So ladies and gentlemen, I think I will end there, and we can use the remaining 30 minutes or so to have an interaction. So I will keep it at that, and then hand back to Secretariat, Dennis and Tim. You can take over for the next session of the moderation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CPA Andrew, for that very good presentation. It was simple, it was very clear, and I'm very sure for someone who is preparing for integration, whether in December or June next year, it gives an insight of how well one can prepare for exams, especially based on what the examiners report about. It was really exhaustive. It covered a number of areas. We hinted on the exams approach. We looked at some examiners' notes. We have the general observations. And I know many of us have been having issues around how to approach this area, especially when they have really covered some good ground in other areas, level 1, level 2, level 3. At least this has been an eye-opener. It has really given an insight of how best we can approach an exam based on the examiner's comments and fare well with this paper, and even after this course. So once again, want to thank you, Andrew, for a very good presentation. However, I kindly urge you participants to post their questions, comments, in the Q&A so that we can benefit as a team, all of us who have participated in this engagement. Otherwise, the presentation was really very good, Andrew. Trying to check in the Q&A, please. At the moment, there are no comments raised or questions, but I know they'll be coming along as we move. Feel free to post. If anything, yes, I see one from, I cannot easily understand this participant, the CQR8KZ, but the participant is wondering whether working schedules are awarded marks. Andrew kindly note that. I know you respond after we have gone through all of them. So one of the participants is wondering whether working schedules are awarded marks. Kindly be encouraged to post so that we handle them. We can handle like 2 or 3 and then we can have another set. Andrew, I think you can handle that.
All right.
And then as we wait for more.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis.
Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Dennis. So for candidate JQ, Mr. or Miss JQR8KZ, a working schedules awarded marks. Yes, working schedules will be awarded marks on condition that those working schedules address the question requirement and have been referred to in your report. Okay, that's why I say that make sure that you plan your analysis well, do the analysis, but it doesn't end there. As you're answering the question, some of the analysis might be relevant, some of it might not be relevant. So the working schedules will be awarded marks if first of all, they are relevant to your answer, but 2, you must also refer to them. For example, you can get a question in the morning. You see, in the morning, you don't have the question requirement in the morning, but you might have financial statements, for example. Now, at a minimum, okay, the moment you have financial statements, as an accountant, as a professional, you must be able to do financial analysis. You must analyze those financial statements at a minimum. Okay. Now, you will do that in the morning. Then come the afternoon. Now, in the afternoon, there might be no direct question that asks you to analyze the financial statements. There might be no question that asks for financial performance assessment. But using the skills you have, as I highlighted earlier, analytical skills, your analytical skills will demand, that is, if you have them, will demand that the quantitative analysis you did can be used to support your discussions. Because in that case study, as you answer the question, which will come later on in the afternoon, there is no way you can fail to use that analysis. Okay, even if there is no question on financial analysis, from your commentary, from your factual discussion, you can't fail to find a slot where you're going to use that financial information. At the very least, maybe it would be part of a slot in your background information. At least you will mention in the background information that this company over the past 2 years has faced debt pressures as indicated by a high gearing ratio. This company has faced declining profitability as evidenced by the gross profit margin or return on equity that has fallen from this ratio to this year over a 2-year period. Detailed ratio computations are in Appendix 3, Appendix 4, Appendix 5. And in that case, you're going to get very good marks for not only writing a good background story, but also for demonstrating good communication skills by appropriately using an appendix as indicated. If there is a question on financial analysis, you don't have to compute the ratios again. Explain the financials, explain the results of your analysis, and refer the examiner to the detailed ratio analysis that was already done in the relevant appendix. So yes, but you must make reference to them. Dennis, can I continue with the other questions in the chat?
Yes, Andrew, you can. Maybe for purposes of, let me try to go through some,
okay,
so that we do justice to save your time. There is one from Patricia. She's wondering why there is no syllabus for, why is it that paper 18 has no syllabus for revision? Of course, the other comment of lecturers going through, maybe you can concentrate on the one of no syllabus for CPA 18. Then there is one from Diego. He's appreciating. Thank you, Mr. Andrew. The presentation has been so concise and complete for me. I wait for questions and subsequent engagements from my fellow participants. However, he's also inquiring whether the previous discussions have been uploaded. Yes, they have. And these ones, we are also going to upload them. There's also one from Anonymous. Please, we encourage you to identify yourself. But for the benefit of all of us, I think we can raise it. Andrew, you can note, is wondering between recommendations and conclusions, which one comes first in the report? Maybe you can note that. Between recommendations and conclusions, which one comes first in the report? There's also one from Raymond. He's wondering how many marks are specifically allocated for a well-structured report. Maybe the question would be, well-structured reports awarded marks, because we just get the comments from the examiners. So he's wondering if a well-structured report attracts some marks. Lydia, thanks you for a presentation. Is wondering that if the paper requires more than one requirement, say a memo, a letter, and brief notes, do I need to have a forwarding communication and title page? Maybe Andrew, the last one for this. There's one from Christian Hi, Dara. Thanks, Andrew, for the presentation. What would you advise one who has spent some good time to read the paper and might not be very well grasping the lower level papers, one sitting this December? Thanks. I think Christian is wondering the kind of advice you can give someone who has taken some bit of time to reach level 4. Maybe he has attempted for quite a number of years and is not comfortable with what was covered at level 1, level 2, and level 3, and is preparing for the exam. Andrew, I think we can handle that set. Then the last set will be the last one. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. I think Patricia's question was the first. Syllabus for integration. Yes, there is a syllabus, and if you go and look at the syllabus booklet, it actually indicates what you must cover. The bad news for you is that what you must cover is the content of paper 1 to paper 17. So it's not right that there is no syllabus. There is a syllabus, and you basically have to go and prepare by revising, if I may use that, what you've already covered. And there is also a study text to guide that preparation. So Patricia, that's for you. What comes first? Recommendations and conclusions. Naturally, you have to conclude. You see, and these are the areas where you demonstrate professionalism and good communication skills. Naturally, you would want to conclude. A conclusion is to say, good, of all the things we have discussed in this paper, of all the requirements that the examiner has given me, of all the issues in the case study, be it corporate governance, be it corporate finance, be it strategic planning, be it economic affairs, these are my take homes. These are my key issues. There are major weaknesses in management or in governance. There is an urgent need to, shore up financial planning or financial reporting expertise. And there is an urgent need for engaging stakeholders or engaging government on economic management. You see, the conclusion is like, what are those top 2-3 things what is the take home, in other words, from the discussion? And then if you've decided on what the top issues are, then comes what you are recommending. Okay, the recommendations are interventions, but you can't intervene without concluding on what needs intervention. So the conclusions will come first and then you recommend last. Does a well-structured report get marks? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And there are significant marks for the communication. Okay, the communication skills take a good portion of the marks. So yes, there are marks for a well-structured report. And then Mr. I think Diego, it was a comment, so we take that. And then the next one was anonymous. It was the conclusions. That's done. And then Lydia, if a paper has more than one requirement, say a memo, a letter, and brief notes, do I need to have a forwarding letter and title page? Not quite. You see, a title page is part of a standard report. Okay, a title page is part of a standard report. And then a memo does not even have a title page. A memo is one of the simplest forms of communication. To, from, date, and subject. That's a memo. Okay, a letter doesn't have, you can't have a forwarding page for a letter or even a title page for a letter. A letter is addressee, salutation, subject, and the content and the sign off at the end. Okay, the forwarding letter or transmittal letter would normally be for the whole package. You see, the examiner, in your context, the examiner could say, part A, prepare a report or a memo. Part B, prepare a letter. Part C, prepare a presentation. Now, that whole package to the board chairman or to the CEO will be submitted under a cover letter or under a forwarding communication, which I think is what you're calling a forwarding communication. So you'll have one submittal letter which says, following my engagement, following the terms of reference, please find attached the following deliverables as agreed. 1, a report. 2, a draft memo. 3, a draft presentation. Okay, but you can't have a forwarding letter to over a letter. No, you can't have a forwarding letter for a memo separately. But if it's a report, yes, a report would normally have a submittal letter. And then for Christian, what advice do you have for someone who has spent some time to reach the paper and might not be very well grasping the lower level papers for one sitting this December? Christian, there are no shortcuts. You just have to try and go back and polish some of those areas. I mentioned in one of the slides that in terms of preparation, you need to go back and revisit some of the things you covered already, and that's what you need to do. There are no shortcuts. Although maybe for your comfort, the paper is not very heavy on technical details. Okay, the paper doesn't go so much into technical details because we know and the examiners know that at this level, since you have passed the other papers, irrespective of how long it took you to pass them, since you have passed the other papers, you are technically above threshold. You are technically competent. But the question is, can you relate those technical bits that are so much scattered across and craft out, a package that is good enough for the market? Can you craft out a package that is acceptable, to a professional? So you can still be able to pass this paper, but you have to go back and comb through those areas. You need to go and run, or scratch those areas as part of your preparation, and then make use of what I said, that you need to practice the analytical skills, you need to practice the conceptual skills. So it will require you to dedicate quite a bit of effort to maybe review of past papers and challenging your thinking, challenging yourself in terms of what the key issues are and how you would have addressed those issues. Debate those issues with peers, debate those issues with your colleagues in a discussion group, and you might be able to be ready for the exam if you start early enough.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We are taking the last set. Just for information, dear participants, we hope to conclude by 7 p.m. around there. So the last set, we are going to have some bit of marathon. There's one from Anonymous. Discussion notes, the same as concept notes. There is one from Raymond. He's wondering if there are study materials for integration of knowledge. Yes, there are study materials for integration of knowledge. Then there is one from JQR8KZ again. How do I present introduction section in the report for a non-problem-based case study? Thank you. He says, how do I present introduction section in the report for a non-problem-based case study? There's one again from Ediabu. He's wondering that if you stated the facts in the question, you stated that the facts in the question should not be reproduced in the answer. What if I'm using the facts to form an analysis or recommendation in the answer? Then the last one from Frank, he says, is a SWOT analysis required in every case study during planning? And are there marks awarded to it when I refer to it? Yes, I think that's what he wanted. If there are marks that are awarded to SWOT analysis. So after that, we shall then go into other business before we conclude. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Dennis. Anonymous is a discussion notes the same as concept notes. Not quite. Discussion notes, you see, it's a guide to a discussion. You think about your place of employment if you're working. Think about a CEO who is meeting somebody, maybe meeting another CEO over a certain discussion. Okay, in the context that I highlighted this earlier on, there was a meeting between a CEO and lenders, and the question asked you to prepare discussion notes. Okay, so what this is, it's like a guide for the CEO during the discussion, pointers on what he will discuss under certain subheadings or themes. Okay, what is it that he's going to talk about in that discussion? So pointers, a guide. That's why I said that a discussion note is a more detailed version of a presentation. Okay, a presentation would normally be bullet points, like you have seen in my presentation, bullet points. But in a discussion note, there will be a bullet on a topic, maybe financial position or financial performance, and then that will be followed by a sentence or two describing what the key issues are about that theme. Those are discussion notes. A concept note is different. A concept note is like a paper. You're submitting a paper on something, a detailed paper on something, indicating why there is an issue, indicating a justification for the intervention, and maybe, you know, a literature to support that intervention. So a concept note is a completely different matter altogether. Okay, it is a more detailed write-up on a particular topic, okay, or a particular theme. It's different. JQR8K asked, how do I present the introduction section in a report for a non-problem-based case study? You see, I said the introduction is not only about problems. The introduction is meant to set the context for what lies ahead. So the introduction could, for instance, be about key background information about the company. It may be a successful company, okay? And it's okay. In the introduction, you will indicate some of the key successes that the company has had. So it's not true, and I didn't say this, it's not true that the introduction is only for problem-based case studies. No, the introduction is, you know, key information about the case study, which aims to set the context for what lies ahead. So in that background or introductory section, you will only have key issues about the company to help the reader, you know, appreciate what the company is about. And then the last one from Mr. Diego Enwaku. He says, you stated that the facts in the question should not be reproduced in the answer. What if I'm using the facts to form an analysis or recommendation in the answer? That is what we want to see. And that is what we mean by analytical skills. Use the facts to support the analysis, okay? But don't just restate the facts. You see, the examiners have noted that some candidates just restate the facts. But restating the facts is nothing unless you analyze, and you've put it very well, Enwaku. You're saying you're using the facts to form an analysis. That is exactly what the examiners want to see. Okay, they want to see that because that is analysis. Use the facts to support your opinions. Use the facts to analyze the case study. Use the facts to form recommendations or to support recommendations. That is exactly what is expected, but not a restatement of the facts just as a restatement, okay? Because that's been seen. Some people just restate the story without analyzing the story. Lastly, is a SWOT analysis required in every case study during planning? And are there marks? Is it awarded marks when I refer to it? There is nothing like a standard SWOT analysis requirement. I said the analysis that you do depends on the kind of information that you have. So you cannot say that SWOT analysis is required for every case study. No. However, normally, I would say this, normally, SWOT analysis is one of the basic tools that you can use to analyze a case study. So it is reasonable to expect a SWOT analysis on almost, each kind of case study, if this has not been done. But there are also case studies where the SWOT analysis has been provided by the examiner. Okay, so it may not, it may be done by the candidate. Does it always get you marks? Depending on how you've referred to it. Depending on how you've referred to it, because SWOT analysis is simply a summary of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So it depends on how you've referred to it. Because you can't just say, this company faces major strengths or faces major weaknesses. Refer to SWOT analysis. That's not saying anything much. So whether or not you'll get scores for it, it depends on how you have actually used the SWOT analysis. But it is reasonable to expect a case study to be supported by a basic SWOT analysis as one of the most, as one of the simplest interventions, or rather one of the simplest tools of analysis. So I think that is it for the questions. Back to you, Dennis, for the closures.
Thank you so much once again, CPA Andrew Kawere, for a very good presentation. Participants this can agree with me that we have really done justice to this. Our director is on call. I don't know if we would wish to say a word or two, because at this level integration, we normally say that it is just the icing. These are people who are going to become members soon. And Mr. John Bosco Tangale, if you can say a word or two, then thank you so much.
Thank you, Dennis. I want to take this opportunity to thank Andrew for a very good presentation. I think the students who have joined in have benefited tremendously, and we should expect them to pass. There are obvious marks, as Andrew explained, those soft skills, those ones you shouldn't miss those marks. I know some of you are worried about technical skills, but if you have to be an accountant, you have to have the technical skills. So if you have spent some time on the course, it is time, as the CPA Andrew advised, go back and refresh so that you are able to competently answer the questions. So I want to thank you for attending. I know the exams are close, and I want to wish everybody success in the forthcoming exams. You have now been empowered with the skills, the techniques, and the necessary skills to pass this integration of knowledge. Beginning, we have a new syllabus. I hope you are not rolling into the new syllabus. When it comes next year, we shall have computer-based for integration of knowledge. So I don't think you want to go there. Make sure that you do what it takes to pass your examination at this sitting. With those remarks, I want to wish everybody a splendid evening. Thank Andrew once again for the presentation, Dennis for organizing, and students once again wish you success. Thank you.
Thank you so much.